afternoon, fine people of YouTube. Welcome back to Maverick Baking. Welcome back to teaching myself how to be a pastry chef or becoming a pastry chef or whatever it is I decided to call this video. In the unfortunate instance that you missed part 1 of this series or that you haven't yet subscribed to this wee channel of mine, my name is Kelly and it's one of my big kind of dreams in life to make things. Things that revolve around pastry. So with this book I've been very kindly gifted. I've set myself the challenge of teaching myself to be a pastry chef because what else do I have to do in my life? In today's video we are tackling the tricky world of confectionery. There's going to be some swearing and this recipe. There's going to be some failures and there's going to be some happy successes. Let's see what happened. Okay folks, I would like to painfully announce that we have fallen at the very first hurdle of the very first day of confectionery making. So we are trying to make mango fruit jellies with a couple of fruit purees, some pectin, some sugar, and they should turn out like these lovely shiny things. Would you like to see what we have instead? This is what we have instead. While we do, admittedly, have some form of jelly. The kind that you could eat out of a bowl with a spoon. This is not confectionery. This is the middle layer of a trifle when it should be a distinct selection of nice, round, firm jellies. I can confirm they do taste good. They taste like everything they're supposed to taste of, but they look like death. Back to the drawing board already. Okay, I have been to the shop to buy more sugar. Let's do this shit. Okay, so at the moment, this lovely shimmering orange pan full of stuff is filled with mango puree and an apricot puree, both just purchased, and they are just kind of slowly warming up. The next thing I have to do is add our gelling agent, which is going to be this pectin powder. This is a bit strange because normally jellies would be set with gelatin, but I don't know if this is kind of the fancy way or the more skilled way, but we're doing it with pectin powder, which is normally used to set jam. We then need to add sugar, we need to add citric acid, which is the kind of stuff that makes your sweets sour, and then we need to get it into our little silicone mold here and let it set. And let's hope this time they actually do. I think last time I maybe didn't add enough pectin, or I maybe didn't cook the sugar long enough, but we're gonna see. Okay, our mixture is feeling much kind of thicker and jelly-like now. Let's hope we can actually get some sweets out of it. This part I do like very much, I must admit. Something about filling molds, sort of one by one, is both wonderfully mindless, but also very therapeutic. So our little mango jelly sweets now have to set at room temperature for 4 hours. The first attempt of me making these, I let them set for 8 and then even tried to freeze them beyond that and they still wouldn't solidify. I don't know what kind of wizardry caused this, but they didn't work. So let's hope these ones do actually set. The other recipe I want to make a start on today are these raspberry and speculoos caramels. Now speculoos biscuits are sort of spiced, caramelized biscuits, a bit like Biscoff biscuits. So I am going to try and make those with some Biscoff biscuits I have at the moment. Kind of similar to the last one. This basically involves boiling things in a pan to a dangerous skin melting temperature and then setting it overnight. So I think I'm going to get a start on this just now, seeing as the sun is already going down, and then we can taste them tomorrow. Let's go. I hope you guys are as weirded out by this colour as I am. I'll check in with you guys first thing tomorrow morning and we can see how both sets of today's confectionery have turned out. So I am proud to announce the existence of these raspberry speculoos caramels. One thing I must say is the colour is fairly disappointing. We were kind of expecting something along the lines of this, which is
clearly gloriously red with big kind of chunks of Biscoff crumbs. So while these ones are a little bit less appealing to the eye, they still look kind of good. They do look like they're supposed to be chocolatey or something just because of the colour they've turned out. But they've turned out even, they're not kind of horrendously sticky or greasy, and I think it's about time we taste one.
Is it gonna taste any better than its ugly brown shade?
It has this kind of nice toasty flavour. I'm imagining it's because of the amount of time that we cooked down that sugar in the cream, but it does have this lovely kind of smokiness, and that with the kind of caramel flavour added from the Biscoff biscuits has made these really good.
The raspberry flavour is just kind of a little kiss at the end. It's not the dominant flavour. The dominant flavour is this nice, creamy, and a little bit chewy caramel. I think if we had left those Biscoff biscuits kind of more rustic and chunky, it might have made for a bigger texture contrast, but flavour-wise, it's good. It's sweet, it's sour, it's creamy, it's kind of smoky. I also have the treat of our mango jellies to show you.
Evidently, these are by no means perfect. I turned them out of the mould, and even though they have kind of proven a little bit softer than I think they're supposed to be, they are infinitely better than the first attempt. I've dusted them in some sugar, as the recipe said to, and while they are still a little bit soft, they do hold their shape like actual sweets, so they are much, much improved.
The downside is they are still very soft to eat, but they are delicious. Obviously incredibly sweet from the sugar, but the apricot flavour in there, the mango in there, and the citric acid just gives it this lovely kind of mouth-watering sourness. My wonderful human beings, hello. As you might have guessed, it's my week off, hence why I don't think you're probably going to get any makeup in any of these clips. Today's recipe is a treacherous one. I'm talking multiple pans of sugar at over 130 degrees Celsius kind of treacherous. Prepare your flesh, prepare your clothes, prepare your work surfaces, because everything is going to get fucked up, basically. Let's take a look at what we're making today.
This, to all my lovely European viewers, will probably be nothing new. This may be called nougat where you live, it may be called Tirone, it may be called a posh Milky Way filling. Whatever you call this, this is what we're making today. Obviously, as the Cordon Bleu is French, we are calling it nougat today. Yes, it's studded with beautiful toasted nuts. It's just so sweet and so chewy. It's just usually not my jam. So we're making it today. So basically I started by toasting a selection of nuts. The recipe suggests hazelnuts, almonds and pistachios. I use hazelnuts, almonds and pine nuts as I didn't actually have any pistachios handy. You then take an egg white, just one little egg white, whip it up until it's nice and fluffy, add some sugar. Then you need to boil honey to a temperature of 140 degrees Celsius, which is terrifying because honey boils almost like deep fat fryer oil. It starts bubbling and going all over the place and sticks and burns everything. Once you have added this and kind of fluffed it into your egg white, you then need to do basically the same with a pan of sugar, water and glucose. You need to boil it to death to 170 degrees Celsius. But basically you then add that in the style of an Italian meringue to your sort of egg white sugar honey mixture. You then place it over a bain-marie to cook even further before adding in your toasted nuts. And this is how we reached this stage. So this has now been setting at room temperature for approximately 2.5 hours. It is now completely cool, though still a little bit sticky to the touch. We weren't given an exact temperature to cool it to or an exact time to cool it. It just said to cool it to room temperature. I've had it at my Scottish windowsill, as you can see, even though it is a sunny day, it is 3 degrees outside. So it has definitely set to even cooler than room temperature. So what we need to do now is we need to slice it, hopefully, and taste it. Guys, I'm still in a bit of shock, but we have actually done it. While I was super skeptical because this mixture is still really difficult to slice and super sticky, as you can see by the knife that, despite being oiled, still has sticky bits on it, but we have actually been able to get whole pieces of proper nougat. You can see that sort of marshmallowy texture in the center. And we also had those lovely big chunks of hazelnut. So the outside is still kind of sticky, as you can see from my fingers, but the inside has actually set into that lovely kind of stiff texture. And it's still nice and soft. Shall we give it a taste?
My first ever handmade nougat. Oh wow. That texture? Oh my god. What I expected from this, as I expect from many kind of mass market nougat or the inside of a Mars bar or a Milky Way, I expected this to be an extremely, extremely sweet substance that was kind of cloyingly sugary and made your teeth hurt. This, it's almost giving me the flavour of halva, which I know a lot of my European viewers will also know what that is or have tasted it. Even though you know it's this intensely sweet and sugary substance, there's so much flavour in there, it's actually not as detectable as you would think. The texture you get immediately is from those lovely crunchy roasted nuts, followed by this almost marshmallowy gooiness on the outside. There's none of that kind of stickiness or that kind of toffee-like super hyper sticky and tooth-wreckingly sticky texture. It's just lovely and pillowy and just kind of dissolves in your mouth. And the nuts give it this intense kind of savoury, nutty flavour. This
has changed my view on nougat. Very happy we have conquered this one.
Okay folks, it's on to the next confectionery recipe. Now this one I'm very excited about because it's a super classic treat, one I'm sure we've all tasted at some point in our lives, and it involves one of my favourite flavours, chocolate. Today we are making
chocolate marshmallows. Now this is what they are supposed to turn out like. I've already been making some notes because I have started making them last night. Essentially, we needed 11 gelatin leaves, which is crazy. It's a lot of gelatin. These needed to be soaked in some cold water. Meanwhile, as always with this chapter, we had some boiling sugar, honey, and glucose together. Then we whipped this kind of all together along with 45 grams of cocoa mass. Now you can buy this labeled as that, but I used Cocoa Runner's 100% cocoa chocolate. So basically all of that kind of boiled and whipped together until we had this amazing fluffy substance that we put into a square kind of cake tin, dusted with icing sugar, and we left it to set for 24 hours.
But enough staring, let's taste one. Ooh, the cocoa flavour is actually impressively kind of stronger than I thought. It makes them taste really chocolatey. Gorgeous texture. It's like a pillow of sweetness. Not just kind of intensely sugary as shot but ones, and not as sticky either. These literally kind of melt in the mouth with just enough of a chew to make it kind of recognisably marshmallowy. And that chocolate flavour, probably because it was 100% cocoa mass that we used, is balanced out by the sugar to make this gorgeous rich chocolatey flavour, even though it doesn't really look like they're gonna have that. These melted into a cup of hot chocolate would be insane. So happy with these. On to the next. Guys, I don't even know where to start with how much I hate this recipe. This next recipe in this challenge I've set myself was supposed to be these raspberry almond fruit jellies. This is supposed to be a mixture of raspberry puree, but as usual, instead of doing that, I just used raspberry jam because it was cheaper and already helped me cut down on some of the sugar. Pectin, glucose, sugar, and tartaric acid. I hate this. I hate everything about it. Now, normally I'm not a big fan of marzipan or kind of artificially almond flavored things anyway, so I knew these weren't going to be my favorite. I am not joking. I have made this recipe 3 times now. This is attempt number 3. I hate it. It hates me. It's a nightmare. I have tried using the recommended amount of pectin. I have tried doubling it. This time I have tripled it, and still it is just far, far too soft. Much like the mango jellies from before. I don't know what I'm going wrong with, but I'm at the point where I don't care enough to make this again because I don't even like marzipan in the first place, and I don't want to waste more money on ingredients that I'm just going to ruin.
Based on this, I'm calling this recipe done. Fuck this and fuck this recipe.
Moving on.
One of the weirdest but kind of most straightforward recipes in the confectionery section of this challenge has been the toffee apples, which has essentially just involved boiling together sugar and water to create a caramel with a little bit of red food colouring and to make a kind of bubbling mass of pain, drying the apples, coating the apples in this caramel stuff, and that's it, done. I'll be totally honest, they looked really ugly, they probably weren't perfect, but I don't care enough to try again.
We're moving on. Guys, I am so excited. Today marks the final installment of the confectionery section of this book. I can't wait to get back into cakes and things. But let me show you the final recipe of this part, and I think it's actually going to be quite a nice one.
So the final recipe we have made are these lemon tart caramels. They look pretty nondescript, but are actually quite kind of innovative and quite cute. The base being Brittany shortbreads, but being from Scotland, it only felt right to replace these with some good Scottish shortbread, and my favourite Scottish brand is Dean's. And essentially we just kind of beat those shortbreads to bits to make a kind of crumbly texture in these caramels. After that, we mixed together cream, lemon zest, sugar, honey, some bicarbonate of soda, and kind of all melted it together and just boiled it to death essentially until it turned into a kind of caramel before adding some set honey. The recipe recommended trimoline, but set honey does the job just perfectly. Before stirring in some melted butter, some white chocolate, putting it into a mould and letting it set for 12 hours.
Are you ready to see the finished product?
They've actually worked. They've turned into proper caramel sweets, and they've actually worked without going gooey, without becoming horrible messes. And they still have some very tangible pieces of shortbread in there. I am super happy with these. So the texture is kind of funny. They're definitely, you know, stiff enough to be independently kind of picked apart and wrapped, but they also have a nice sort of malleability that makes them pleasant to eat without them being too kind of fudge-like.
I don't think anything in this recipe could have been bad. Even if these were burnt or 2 weeks old, they would probably still be good. Gorgeous soft texture, freshness from the lemon, and then you get that lovely, rich, dark, sugary, creamy caramel. It melts in the mouth, but those shortbreads have really held up their texture. I worried that they might just kind of vanish altogether or that they might go soggy, but they still offer a really, really welcome crunch in these caramels. And surprisingly, they're not actually that sweet. We're done. I don't have to boil any sugar anymore. I'll be completely honest. I think this might be the worst section of the book done. I enjoyed the kind of first part of this course because I adore chocolate, everything about it. I adore working with it, I adore eating it, everything. But confectionery, I neither enjoy making it or eating it. As much as I love sugar in the form of sweets, candies, it's just not really my thing, and it was hard. And no one likes to do things that are hard. I'm very much looking forward to part 3, which is going to involve madeleines, financiers, tiny little delicate baked goods, which is a bit more in the line of expertise I pretend I already have. I really hope you guys can join me for it, and I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you for the next one.